Unadministered revolution is the only answer. Assassination is their method. Every day, half a dozen men active in politics are stabbed to death. Another 3 or 4 simply disappear. Mrs. Gandhi's campaigning harder than ever, bounding up the steps in a display of energy that would do credit to any American president. The only way the princes see to beat Mrs. Gandhi is to get into Parliament themselves.
Your extreme enemies, of course, suggest that you want absolute majority for absolute power, that you want to move India in the direction of a sort of Russia. Now, what's your answer to that?
On the campaign trail, he's plain Mr. Mansoor Ali Khan. The sportsman the world over, he's the ex-captain of India's cricket team and the only Indian to score more than 200 runs in a test match against England. But to the voters, this unassuming young man is a prince, the Nawab of Patodi, and something close to divine.
और हमारे नरेंद्र साहब की बहुत बड़ी प्रेस है, वो भी करोड़पति आदमी है, वो मजहब की बातें करते हैं। हम आपके सामने कोई गाय बछड़े की बातें करने नहीं आए। मजहब की बातें अलग हैं, सियासत और चीज है।
Like his father before him, the Nawab went to Oxford. In true prince and showgirl style, he's married a film star, Sharmila Tagore, whose picture adorns every Indian cinema. Now he's busy addressing illiterate peasants, practicing the common touch with a regal manner. Once made the Nawab and another 40 of India's Rajas abandon the throne for the soapbox, the ceremonial elephant for the dusty jeep. In short, why is His Highness trying to win election to Parliament from the Gurgaon constituency of Haryana state? What precipitated this election was Mrs. Gandhi's attempt to force through legislation that would have deprived the princes of their privileges, above all, their privy purses or state pensions, which range from a miserable £10 a year to a handsome 150,000 for the Maharaja of Mysore. The Nawab draws a more modest 2,500. The only way the princes see to beat Mrs. Gandhi is to get into Parliament themselves. Fully conscious that their votes count just as much as the men's, though still shy of showing their faces, the women chant their own campaign song. They feel no feminist solidarity with Mrs. Gandhi. You've seen what a disaster her Congress party has been, they sing. Now, behold, the Nawab has come to save us. Meanwhile, the candidate negotiates with his potential supporters in the traditional smoke-filled room. He's up against men with much more money to spend. His almost godlike appeal has to stretch a long way. Satisfactory reassurances apparently given, elephant tusks beat out the drum rhythm. The Nawab will redress our grievances. The day's campaigning over, I asked the prince if he was standing simply to protect his privileges.
No, I don't think so, really. Although I suppose I am slightly selfishly motivated, but I feel that the situation in this country is not very bright at the moment, and the way things are going, it looks as if the Congress party remains in power, that the situation could get worse. As such, I've joined one of our regional opposition parties in the hope that we shall try and stop this rot that is going on in this country.
Whether you regard yourself as a prince or not, obviously most of the people you're meeting do. Do you think it gives you an unfair advantage over your rivals?
Well, I don't think so, especially in my case, because I spent a lot of my time away from my place. As you know, I've been playing cricket throughout the world, and as it is, my estate was so small that I would be considered a big landlord rather than a prince.
Another prince and another champion, the Maharaja of Bikaner. Dr. Kearney Singh represented his country at the Mexico Olympics. Judging by the walls of his dining room, card room and billiard room, he's a pretty good shot. For the last 19 years, His Highness has also represented his constituents, once his subjects, in the Indian Parliament, Lok Sabha. They seem to appreciate it. The family's old fort long ago became a museum. Now even the new Victorian palace is a strain on the princely privy purse of £50,000. Only 300 servants remain, plus a few peacocks. The Maharaja, who leads the Concord, the Prince's trade union, insists that he's not fighting to preserve privilege, the 19-gun salutes, the guards at government expense, but democracy itself.
That we are representatives of the people, not the princes. And we are not standing for our personal gains, privileges or privy purses. We are standing to defend democracy, individual freedom and our constitution. And in my opinion, that is what is at stake in these elections.
The privy purses, of course, do only amount to something like 2.5 million, but while India remains so poor, can even this amount be afforded?
Well, you see, the point is, how much of the privy purse is spent on the princes themselves? Practically a fraction. Most of it goes in salaries. I myself have 500 people who draw their sustenance from this, and at least 200,000 people draw their incomes from the privy purses of the Indian princes.
The princes may all be jolly good chaps, like the Nawab of Patodi, but while the average income of the farmers he's talking to hovers around the £30 a year mark, it's hard to have too much sympathy with men who enjoy a tax-free pension for life, in many cases worth many thousands of pounds, not to mention all those little luxuries that duty-free import can provide. Of course, from the prince's point of view, it's rather different. They only gave up their power at the time of independence in return for these privileges they now enjoy. At the time, they controlled half of India between them. Now they say that Mrs. Gandhi's attempt to deprive them of their purses is the breaking of a solemn bargain. It will only be poetic justice if the princes take one or two of the seats away from Mrs. Gandhi's candidates. Richard Lindley, News at 10, Gurgaon.
Up at 5 a.m. after only 2 hours sleep, Mrs. Indira Gandhi races through Uttar Pradesh state at a steady gallop. It would take too long to let the local party workers put garlands round her neck. Instead, she gathers them in her arms like washing from a line. Today, despite the choking dust, Mrs. Gandhi's campaigning harder than ever, bounding up the steps in a display of energy that would do credit to any American president. But this is her own constituency of Rai Bareli. Here, as a teenager, she accompanied her father, Pandit Nehru, on anti-British agitation. Here, her late husband was elected to Parliament. There's no doubt that she'll be re-elected by a big majority this coming week. At every meeting, 24 every day, she reminds the largely illiterate voters of her new Congress Party symbol, a cow and calf. A cow is not the emblem Western women politicians would choose, but to the Hindu majority of India, it's a sacred animal, giver of good things, and to the peasant farmer, a sign of prosperity. The symbol is new by court order, but the real reason is that the Congress Mrs. Gandhi leads is a rather different party from the one her father guided through the early days of independence.
Nehru's Congress, though committed to socialism, contained every shade of political opinion within its ranks. Over the years, Congress became more adept at wheeling and dealing to stay in power than in actually carrying through those socialist reforms in its manifesto, reforms that the poor of India so desperately needed. The last election showed that Congress was gradually losing the confidence of the people, and in 1969, the party split. The larger share, claiming to embody the true reforming zeal of the party and led by Mrs. Gandhi, could only hang on to power with the support of left-wing splinter groups. Now comes Mrs. Gandhi's opportunity to get her new Congress an absolute majority.
Mrs. Gandhi's campaign speeches are short on specific promises. True, she's committed to land reform to rescue landless labourers from absolute poverty, to putting a ceiling on urban property holding, and to creating 500,000 extra new jobs in a country where 3 million join the workforce every year. But the plans have always been there. Mrs. Gandhi's appeal now is for the absolute majority in Parliament necessary to carry them out.
So many of the promises of the old Congress haven't been fulfilled, particularly as regards helping the poor of India. Now, why do you think your new Congress can do it?
No, this is not true that promises have not been fulfilled. The country has made tremendous advance and has achievements to its credit. But now we are at a spot where if we continue as we are going, the disparities will increase. If we go along the path which we are putting, we want to combine economic growth with social justice. That's the only difference.
Your extreme enemies, of course, suggest that you want absolute majority for absolute power, that you want to move India in the direction of a sort of Russia. Now, what's your answer to that?
I wonder if you've ever seen our parliament. Is it possible in India?
At the burning ghat at Howrah, the cremation ground of one of Calcutta's suburbs, the mortal remains of a murdered politician turned to ashes. He was P. Jayananda Chatterjee, a district organizer for the old Congress Party, just one more victim of the violence that disfigures this city and the state of West Bengal. Every day, 6 men active in politics are stabbed to death. Another 3 or 4 simply disappear. Too often, the funeral processions that follow the discovery of a body are merely the prelude to revenge on the political group thought to be responsible. The clashes on the walls between one political front and another happen all too often on the streets. The real battle is between the CPIM, the Communist Party of India Marxist, and the rest. Though the CPIM has had more members than anyone else injured in these clashes, many believe that's simply because they're more numerous and more violent. The CPIM puts the responsibility for violence either on the police or on the Naxalites. There are several Naxalites among this group of graduate students at Calcutta University. Because police are so active in locking them up, they're now reluctant to declare themselves. The Naxalites refuse to join in the democratic political process, insist that revolution is the only answer. Assassination is their method. Only a couple of months ago, students just like these well-mannered young people stabbed the Vice-Chancellor Jadavpur University to death the day before he retired. In the last year, police have captured 4,000 bombs, many gallons of acid, and every kind of weapon from rifles to swords, daggers and hatchets. I talked to Ranjit Gupta, recently appointed police commissioner.
Commissioner, who's causing the violence? Who really is responsible for these 5 or 6 political assassinations every day?
Well, a number of them are Naxalite murders, but there are also a number of inter-party clashes, different political parties fighting each other, and they're the antisocial activists who are working for them.
Is it politicians themselves who are doing the violence, or are they merely hiring?
No, the politicians do not actively indulge in violence, but many politicians support violence. And that is the trouble.
And you would say nobody's hands are really clean at the moment?
Well, not many hands which are clean, let me put it that way.
Everybody's enemy, the police have suffered particularly badly. Throughout the state, nearly 60 have been killed and 700 wounded in the last year. Though the army is now helping in the combing operations that are intended to flush out the urban terrorists, they only cordon off the area while the police have to go in and search. Some civil servants have declined to man the polling booths. In some areas, people may be too frightened to vote despite armed police protection. Certainly if the revolution did begin in India, it would be here in Calcutta, where 8 or 9 million people struggle through a life made miserable by a vicious circle of violence, closure of factories, and decline in investment leading to unemployment. In Calcutta, unlike most other Indian cities, it's still primitive manpower that propels the rickshaws. Here, more than elsewhere in the country, democracy has seemed powerless to make life better. Already 4 candidates in this election have been killed. There's little to stop the system they stood for going the same way. Richard Lindley, News at 10, Calcutta.